I can replace you anytime, my boss smirked. But now it's him who's looking for a job. Nobody remembers the day they start losing their dignity. It happens in small doses, like water dripping on stone. My name is Daniel Harper. I've been an account executive at Wexley Solutions for 5 years, 3 months and 17 days. Not that I was counting until recently. Marketing firms like ours run on 3 things: coffee, impossible deadlines, and the constant fear of losing clients. I excelled at navigating all 3, bringing in more revenue than any other executive on our floor. The corner office should have been mine last year. It wasn't. "Morning, Dan," Melissa from graphic design waved as I balanced my laptop bag and a cardboard tray of coffees. "You're here early again." I forced a smile. "Big presentation today. Thought I'd sweeten the deal." I nodded toward the coffee cups. One was for Trevor Marks, my boss, despite knowing he'd probably never thank me for it. Melissa lowered her voice. "Trevor's already in. Sounds like he's on the warpath about something." "Perfect. Just perfect." I reached my cubicle. Yes, cubicle, despite being responsible for 32% of company revenue last year, and quickly arranged the morning's battle plan. The McAllister proposal needed final numbers. The Brightline campaign required urgent revisions. 3 potential clients needed callbacks, and somewhere in between I had to prepare for our 10 a.m. team meeting. At 9:58 I gathered my notes and headed to the conference room. The coffee for Trevor had gone cold, but I brought it anyway. Maybe he'd appreciate the gesture if not the temperature. Trevor Marks sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone. At 42, just 7 years older than me, he'd somehow risen to marketing director while better talent stagnated beneath him. His hair was expensively cut, his suit tailored, his watch a Rolex that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Everything about him suggested success, except for the perpetual dissatisfaction in his eyes. "You're cutting it close, Harper," he said without looking up. I placed the coffee beside him. "Sorry about that. Working on the McAllister proposal." He glanced at the cup, pushed it aside, and said nothing. Someone snickered from across the table. The meeting progressed as they always did, Trevor dominating the conversation, taking credit for successful campaigns while distributing blame for the failures. I remained silent until he unveiled his grand new strategy for the Vanderson account. Our newest client, a luxury real estate developer, I'd personally brought in after months of courting. "We're going with a full digital approach," Trevor announced. "No print, no billboards, no traditional media." I frowned. "But Trevor, Vanderson specifically requested traditional media. Their target demographic skews older. We're pushing them into the future," Trevor cut me off. "Digital is cheaper, more measurable, and frankly it's what we're best at." My stomach tightened. I'd promised Vanderson a balanced approach. I'd walked their CEO through our previous successful mixed media campaigns. Going digital only would alienate them completely. "With respect," I said carefully, choosing my words, "I think we should reconsider." Mr. Vanderson himself told me. "Are you questioning my strategy, Dan?" Trevor's voice dropped dangerously. The room fell silent. 12 pairs of eyes darted between us, then found sudden interest in their notepads. "I'm just concerned we're not honoring what the client asked for," I managed. Trevor leaned forward, his custom cufflinks catching the light. "Here's what concerns me, Dan. I'm concerned that you think your opinion matters more than mine." His smile never reached his eyes. "I'm concerned that you've forgotten who runs this department." My face burned. 5 years of exemplary service, countless late nights, abandoned weekends, clients who requested me by name. And this was my reward: public humiliation. "I haven't forgotten anything," I said quietly. "Good." Trevor's smile widened into something predatory. "Because I can replace you anytime, Dan. Remember that." The words hung in the air like poison. No one moved, no one breathed. "Now," Trevor continued as if nothing had happened. As I was saying about the digital strategy, the rest of the meeting passed in a blur. I nodded at appropriate intervals, made notes I couldn't focus on, and tried to ignore the pitying glances from colleagues who wouldn't dare speak up in my defense. When we finally dispersed, I returned to my cubicle and stared at the McAllister proposal without seeing it. Years of dedicated service reduced to a threat delivered with a smirk. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanderson himself. Looking forward to seeing what you come up with for the traditional campaign elements. The billboard concepts especially. I put my head in my hands. How was I supposed to deliver what the client wanted, when Trevor had just torpedoed the entire strategy? More importantly, how much longer could I take being treated like this? That night I stayed late again. The office emptied gradually, first the hourly staff, then the other executives. Finally even the cleaning crew. Only the blue glow of my computer screen illuminated my workspace as I meticulously finished the McAllister proposal. Trevor had left hours ago, briefcase in hand, without so much as a goodbye. As I finally shut down my computer at 10:23 p.m., a strange calm settled over me. "I can replace you anytime, Dan. Remember that." The words echoed in my mind, but instead of humiliation, I felt something else stirring: determination. 5 years ago I would have accepted this treatment, grateful just to have a job at a prestigious firm. 3 years ago I would have worked harder, hoping to earn respect through sheer effort. 1 year ago I would have started quietly job hunting. But today was different. I gathered my things, turned off the lights in my section, and walked to the elevator. On the silent ride down, I looked at my reflection in the polished metal doors. Tired eyes, rumpled shirt, slumped shoulders. "I can replace you anytime." Maybe he could. But as the elevator reached the ground floor and the doors slid open, a dangerous thought formed in my mind. What if I replaced him instead? I stepped out into the night, my path suddenly very clear. The next morning, I arrived at the office with two things: a pounding headache and a half-formed plan. "Different how?" I asked, pausing. "You look different today," Melissa commented as I passed her desk. I smiled. "Must be the extra shot of espresso." She tilted her head. "I don't know," less defeated, but it wasn't caffeine fueling me. It was clarity. For 5 years I'd been playing by Trevor's rules designed to benefit only him. Time to write my own rulebook. I felt every eye in the room on me. This was my moment for vindication, to say "I told you so" in front of everyone. "We need to pivot," Trevor announced, as if this were a brilliant revelation he'd just had. "Daniel, you worked directly with Vanderson. What did they specifically request again?" The Vanderson campaign proceeded exactly as Trevor dictated, digital only, and exactly as I predicted. It bombed. Our first analytics report showed dismal engagement rates. When Trevor called an emergency meeting to discuss the unexpected results, I kept my mouth shut. Let him flounder. Instead, I simply said, "They wanted traditional media as well, billboards, print ads. I still have the concepts ready to go." No apology, no acknowledgement that he'd ignored my advice. Typical. Trevor nodded as if this had been his plan all along. "Good. Implement those immediately. Everyone else, brainstorm how we can salvage the digital portion." He barely glanced up from his phone. "Fine. Whatever. Just keep it under 2. But as the meeting dispersed, I lingered behind. "Trevor," I was thinking, "maybe I should take Mr. Vanderson to lunch. Smooth things over personally? Perfect." "Daniel," he boomed, rising to shake my hand. "Good to see you outside that glass box you all work in." Over pasta and sparkling water. Vanderson didn't drink alcohol. I apologized for the campaign's rocky start. The next day I met Edward Vanderson at Luciana's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. Not on company channels, I'd texted him directly. "Honestly," he confided, "I was about to call your boss. This whole digital-only thing has been a disaster. My board is asking questions." I leaned forward. "Between us, Edward, I fought for your original vision, but sometimes, corporate drama get in the way of good marketing." His eyebrows rose. "I had a feeling, you struck me as someone who actually listens." As he signaled for the check, he said something that changed everything. "You know, Daniel, you understand our brand better than your entire firm put together. Have you ever considered consulting directly?" What happened next exceeded my wildest expectations. Edward Vanderson, billionaire real estate mogul, notoriously difficult client, spent the next hour telling me everything about his business vision, his frustrations with previous marketing firms, even his concerns about retirement. I took mental notes of every detail. "I do listen, and honestly, I'm worried about your campaign. That's why I wanted to meet off-site, to speak freely." Back at the office I documented everything in an encrypted file, noting Vanderson's personal preferences, family details, and business concerns, things that would never make it into Wexley's CRM. I kept my face neutral, despite my racing heart. I'm committed to Wexley for now, but I'm always open to new opportunities. He slid me his personal card. Keep that thought in mind. He's losing it, whispered Corey, an account manager, as we watched Trevor storm past. Over the next 2 months, I repeated this process with 5 other major clients. Every lunch, every coffee, every quick chat occurred off company channels, always initiated through personal texts or calls. I kept meticulous records of every conversation. Meanwhile, Trevor grew increasingly erratic. The Vanderson campaign had improved with the traditional elements added, but other accounts were struggling under his micromanagement. One morning he spent 3 hours berating the design team over font choices, while ignoring urgent client calls. 4 months after Trevor's humiliating "I can replace you" comment, I had cultivated relationships with 7 major clients, representing over 40% of Wexley's annual revenue, and had verbal interest from 5 of them about following me if I ever left. Just focus on your work, I advised, playing the loyal company man. But secretly, I was counting Trevor's missteps, documenting every poor decision, every client he neglected. At home each night I worked on my side project, Harper Consulting. I registered the LLC, built a professional website with placeholder client logos, and drafted service packages specifically designed for the clients I knew were unhappy at Wexley. I researched pricing strategies that would allow me to charge premium rates while still undercutting Wexley's bloated fee structure, all while maintaining the facade of the same old dependable Daniel. "Working late again?" Trevor asked one evening, coat draped over his arm, clearly headed out early despite looming deadlines. "Someone has to finish the Brightline presentation," I replied mildly. After he left, I opened my personal email and confirmed a breakfast meeting with Brightline's CEO, scheduled for 7 a.m. the next day, 2 hours before our official Wexley presentation. I'd walk in already knowing exactly what the client wanted, while Trevor would be flying blind. The seeds were planted. My safety net was growing stronger by the day, but I wasn't quite ready to make my move. He patted my shoulder condescendingly. "That's why I keep you around, Harper. Reliable workhorse." For once I allowed myself to feel hopeful. Surely this achievement would earn some recognition. Maybe even that corner office. I just closed the biggest new account in Wexley's history, Meridian Hospitality Group, a $3.2 million annual contract. I'd pursued them for months, working weekends, sacrificing sleep. The signed contract had arrived with a personal note from their CEO, "Daniel, your persistence and vision won us over. Looking forward to working together." That changed the following Friday. I knocked on Trevor's door, contract in hand, allowing myself a rare moment of pride. I had no idea I was walking straight into the breaking point. "Come in," he called. Trevor didn't look up when I entered his office. His attention remained fixed on his computer screen, the blue light reflecting off his expensive glasses. "Just signed Meridian Hospitality Group," I announced, unable to keep the pride from my voice. I placed the contract on his desk. $3.2 million annual. They're looking to completely revamp their brand presence across North America. Trevor glanced at the contract, then pushed it aside. "Finally landed them, huh? Took you long enough." My smile faltered. They were considering 3 other agencies, major players. We weren't even in their consideration set until I— "Sit down, Harper," Trevor interrupted, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. I sat. "While you've been chasing Meridian," Trevor said, opening a drawer, "you've been letting other responsibilities slide."
"What?"
"I've maintained all my existing accounts. In fact, client satisfaction scores for my portfolio are up 12% this quarter. That's not how I see it." Trevor pulled out a manila folder and slid a piece of paper across the desk. My blood ran cold as I read the heading written warning, "Performance and Conduct." "What is this?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "You've been conducting unauthorized meetings with clients," Trevor said flatly. "Meeting with Vanderson. Having private calls with Brightline. Going around proper channels." My mind raced. How did he know? Had someone seen us? Then it hit me. Expense reports. I'd charged those client lunches to the company. Those were relationship-building meetings, I argued. Standard practice, everyone does it. Without briefing your superior beforehand? Without filing contact reports? That's insubordination, Harper. I stared at him in disbelief. Insubordination? I saved the Vanderson account after your digital-only strategy tanked. I've been building client relationships that benefit this company. Your job is to execute my vision, not create your own. Trevor leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. And then there's the matter of your attitude. My attitude? I've been doing everything for this company. Several team members have reported that you've been undermining management, making comments, questioning decisions. It was a lie. I'd been careful, so careful, never voicing my true thoughts around colleagues who might report back. This was a setup. Who said that? I demanded. I have the right to know my accusers. That's confidential. Trevor tapped the warning letter. Sign it. My hand shook as I picked up the pen. And if I don't? Then we skip straight to termination. 5 years. 5 years of my life dedicated to this place, and it had come to this sign of fabricated warning or lose my job on the spot. I signed. Good. Trevor took the paper back. Oh, and about your quarterly bonus, the executive committee has decided to reduce it by 60% due to these performance issues. The bonus. The one I'd been counting on to finish my website and business setup. The one I'd already mentally spent on filing fees and legal consultations for Harper Consulting. You can't be serious, I managed. Dead serious. Trevor closed the folder with a sense of finality. The Meridian win is the only reason you're still employed, Harper. Remember, no one's irreplaceable. There it was again. That casual cruelty, that reminder of my supposed disposability. I stood up, legs unsteady. Is there anything else? Yes. I'll be taking over primary contact with Meridian. I need a steady hand on our largest account. Of course he would. Swoop in and claim credit for my biggest win. Probably angling for a promotion off my work. Fine. I said, voice hollow. Will that be all? Trevor was already looking back at his computer. That's all. I walked out of his office in a daze, passing colleagues who had no idea what had just happened. My face must have betrayed something, because Melissa stood up from her desk as I passed. Dan, are you okay? I couldn't even answer. I grabbed my jacket and laptop and headed for the exit. Tell anyone who asks I'm sick, I called over my shoulder. The ride home was a blur. 26 floors down in the elevator, a taxi I'd barely remembered hailing. Streets passing outside the window as my mind replayed Trevor's words over and over. In my apartment, I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon, something I rarely did before sunset, and pulled out the warning letter from my bag. I spread it flat on my kitchen counter, reading every fictitious accusation again. Unauthorized client contact. Failure to follow established protocols. Insubordination and undermining management. The paper trembled in my hand, not from fear or sadness, but from rage, cold, calculated rage, that had been building for months, years even. I set down my glass and opened my laptop. The Harper Consulting website, nearly complete, glowed back at me. I'd been planning to launch in 3 months, after securing a bit more capital from my bonus. But Trevor had just accelerated my timeline. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Edward Vanderson's number. Then Brightline's CEO. Then Meridian's. My finger hovered over the call button. Was I really going to do this? Cross this line? Burn this bridge? My gaze drifted back to the warning letter. To the slashed bonus. To the years of disrespect and the smirk on Trevor's face when he'd said those words again. No one's irreplaceable. I pressed call. Edward? It's Daniel Harper. I'm sorry to call so late, but I wanted to discuss something important with you. My situation at Wexley has changed, and I think it's time I shared some thoughts about the future of your marketing strategy. 2 hours and 7 phone calls later, I sat back in my chair, both exhausted and exhilarated. Every single client I'd called had expressed the same sentiment. They weren't loyal to Wexley. They were loyal to me, and if I left, their business would follow. It was time. Monday morning arrived with a strange sense of calm. I'd spent the weekend finalizing my escape, completing my website, drafting client agreements and consulting with a lawyer about non-compete clauses. Turns out, Wexley's employee contract had a critical flaw. They'd never updated it after the state legislature had limited the enforceability of non-competes 2 years ago. I dressed more carefully than usual, selecting my best suit, not for Wexley, but for a lunch meeting I'd scheduled with Meridian's marketing team. My resignation meeting was penciled in for 4:45 p.m., strategically timed as the last appointment of my Wexley career. The office hummed with Monday energy as I walked to my cubicle. I'd already cleared out personal items gradually over the past week, a photo here, a desk toy there. Small enough changes that nobody noticed. "You look better," Melissa commented, as I passed. "Feeling recovered?" "Never better," I replied with genuine enthusiasm. For the first time in years, I meant it. My morning unfolded with meticulous precision. I transferred all client contact information to my personal devices. I completed essential handover notes for accounts I actually cared about. I deleted personal emails from the company server. At noon, I left for my client lunch. The restaurant I'd chosen for meeting Meridian's team was deliberately far from Wexley's usual haunts. No chance of running into colleagues. Daniel. Gregory Palmer, Meridian CMO, stood to greet me. I brought our entire marketing leadership, as requested. 5 executives from Meridian sat around a private dining table, curious expressions on their faces. None of them knew why I'd asked for this meeting, only that it was confidential and important. I placed my Wexley business card on the table, then set my personal card beside it. The new one read Daniel Harper, founder and CEO Harper Consulting. As of this afternoon, I began. I'll no longer be with Wexley Solutions. Before anyone from there contacts you with some story about my departure, I wanted to meet face to face. Surprise rippled around the table. "You're the only reason we signed with Wexley," Gregory said flatly. I nodded. "I know. And I want to assure you that the $3.2 million contract you signed is still valid. You can continue with Wexley if you wish." Gregory exchanged glances with his team. "Or," I slid a folder across the table, "or you can exercise the 30-day cancellation clause on page 12 of your agreement and transition to Harper Consulting. Same strategic direction, same dedicated service, but with a leaner team and a 15% reduction in overall fees." Over the next hour, we discussed specifics. By dessert, they'd verbally committed to moving their business. Gregory insisted on walking me out. "That took guts," he said as we waited for our cars. "But why now? You just landed us. Let's just say Wexley and I have different values." I replied. "They'll assign someone competent to your account." Gregory laughed. "For about 3 days. Then we're following you." Back at the office, the afternoon crawled by as I methodically closed out projects and transferred files. I'd prepared a thumb drive with only the bare minimum of materials I was legally entitled to take: sample work I'd created, public case studies, my performance reviews. At 4:40 p.m. I printed my resignation letter, short, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. 2 weeks' notice effective immediately. As I approached Trevor's office, I saw him through the glass wall laughing on the phone, feet propped on his desk. He waved me in, without ending his call. "Yeah, totally. We'll play 9 holes on Saturday," he continued, speaking into the phone. "The client's flying in Friday night." I recognized the context immediately. He was talking about Meridian's CEO, who I just learned from Gregory was actually on vacation in Italy this week. Another Trevor lie. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. Trevor glanced at it, held up a finger in the 1-minute gesture, and continued his fictional golf conversation for another full minute before hanging up. "What's this?" he finally asked, picking up the letter. "My resignation. 2 weeks' notice." He scanned it quickly, his expression unchanging. "Heading to a competitor?" "Starting my own consultancy," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Trevor snorted. "Good luck with that. You know the non-compete covers is unenforceable under state law as revised 2 years ago," I finished for him. My lawyer confirmed it. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, quickly replaced by his trademark smugness. "Doesn't matter. No clients will follow you without connections and resources." If he only knew about my lunch with Meridian, about the other 6 accounts that had already verbally committed to joining me, about the meticulous groundwork I'd laid while he'd been busy taking credit for my work. "You're probably right," I said blandly. Trevor tossed the letter aside. HR will process this. I assume you can handle transition documents? Already done? All active projects are documented and ready for handover. He barely looked at me, already turning back to his computer. Fine, don't expect a reference. I won't need one. That got his attention. He looked up, irritation crossing his features. You know, Harper, I gave you chances that others wouldn't have, mentored you. The audacity nearly made me laugh. Thank you for the opportunity, I said. Instead, the corporate equivalent of bless your heart, Trevor waved dismissively, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And there it was, my cue to exit, delivered with the same disrespect I'd endured for years. For a brief moment, I considered telling him everything, about the clients ready to jump ship, about his imminent downfall, about the satisfaction I'd feel watching it all unfold. Instead, I simply nodded and turned away. My silence would speak volumes soon enough. The next 2 weeks were surprisingly peaceful. Trevor avoided me entirely, assigning another executive to handle my transition. I worked my required hours, no more, no less. I attended necessary meetings, spoke when spoken to, and counted down the days. On my final afternoon, I placed my keycard and company phone on Trevor's empty desk. He hadn't even bothered to be present for my departure. No goodbye, no good luck, not even a perfunctory handshake. Perfect. As the elevator doors closed on Wexley Solutions for the last time, I felt nothing but relief. Trevor thought he'd won. He thought I was slinking away defeated. He had no idea what was coming. Freedom tastes like expensive coffee in the middle of a Tuesday morning. 1 week into my post-Wexley life, I sat at an artisanal cafe, finalizing proposals on my laptop instead of suffocating in fluorescent-lit meeting rooms. No cubicle walls, no Trevor breathing down my neck, just the pleasant hum of productivity on my own terms. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. You won't believe what's happening. Can you talk? Melissa and I had always been friendly, but never close enough for midday gossip sessions. Something was up. It's chaos, she whispered, when I called her. I could tell she was hiding in a stairwell from the echo. Meridian sent formal notice yesterday. They're terminating their contract. I feigned surprise. That was fast. Did they say why? Trevor told everyone they're restructuring their marketing needs. But Corey heard the real story from accounting. They specifically cited loss of key personnel in their termination letter. I smiled into my coffee. That's unfortunate. That's not all. Brightline called this morning. Cancelled their quarterly strategy review, and Vanderson has been impossible to reach. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. I'm sure Trevor will sort it out, I said, struggling to sound concerned. Trevor's losing it, Melissa continued. He threw a stapler at the conference room wall yesterday. Called an emergency all-hands meeting where he'd basically threatened everyone's jobs if we lose another account. I wished I could have seen that tantrum. Sounds stressful. It is. 4 people have started job hunting already. She paused, including me. Send me your resume, I said without hesitation. I might know of something. After we hung up, I opened my calendar. 3 client meetings scheduled for today, all former Wexley accounts. 2 signed contracts already in hand. My new office space wouldn't be ready for another 2 weeks. But my home office setup was more than adequate for now. That afternoon I received another unexpected call. This time from Patricia Winters, Wexley's HR director. Daniel, I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, Patricia. What can I do for you? This is somewhat unusual, she began, her professional tone tinged with discomfort. But we've had some concerns raised by clients about their account transitions. They're requesting information about your new venture. Translation: Trevor had forbidden anyone from sharing my contact details, and clients were getting frustrated. I'm not pursuing Wexley clients, if that's what you're asking. I replied truthfully. I didn't need to pursue them, they were pursuing me. Of course not, Patricia said quickly. But perhaps as a professional courtesy, you might consider speaking with Trevor about Meridian specifically. The situation has become rather tense. I almost laughed. I'm afraid I can't help with that. Client decisions are their own. After declining Patricia's awkward request, I sent a quick message to my lawyer updating her on the situation. Better safe than sorry. By the end of week 2, the trickle became a flood. My phone rang constantly with calls from former colleagues asking discreetly about job opportunities. My inbox filled with client inquiries. Harper Consulting secured 5 former Wexley accounts in 10 days, approximately 30% of my former employer's annual revenue. I hired Melissa as my first employee. She brought valuable intel with her departure. Trevor's on final warning from the board, she told me as we set up her workstation in my temporary office space. The quarterly projections are a disaster. He's blaming everyone but himself, the market, the economy, even the clients for being disloyal. Has he mentioned me? I couldn't help asking. Melissa smirked. Only every 5 minutes. He's convinced you stole confidential information, had IT search your old computer and everything. I'd expected as much. They won't find anything. They didn't, but that just made him angrier. The real earthquake came in week 3. My phone lit up with a text from Gregory Palmer at Meridian. Just FYI. We sent formal notification today that we're moving our business to Harper Consulting, effective immediately. We're paying the early termination fee, worth every penny. Not even 15 minutes later, my phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize. Harper Consulting, this is Daniel. You think you're clever, don't you? Trevor's voice tight with barely controlled rage. I leaned back in my chair. Hello, Trevor. What can I do for you? You can explain how the hell you poached our biggest client 3 weeks after leaving. I didn't poach anyone, I replied calmly. Meridian made their own decision. Bullshit, he exploded. We had a signed contract, with a standard termination clause, which they exercised, completely above board. Trevor's breathing was audible through the phone. This isn't over. The board is meeting tomorrow. I'm recommending legal action. On what grounds? Client theft, corporate espionage, breach of contract. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. Good luck with that. My lawyer will be happy to explain why none of those apply. The line went silent for a moment. When Trevor spoke again, his voice had changed. Less angry, more calculating. What do you want, Harper? A consulting contract with Wexley? A partner title if you come back? Name your price. The desperation in his offer was almost pathetic. The great Trevor Marks, reduced to begging the employee he treated as disposable. I'm not interested in coming back, Trevor. Then what? What's your endgame here? My answer was simple and true, building something better. I ended the call and turned back to my work. By evening, industry blogs were buzzing with the news that Meridian had dropped Wexley. One particularly detailed post mentioned mass client exodus and leadership crisis. The next morning, Gregory called again. Thought you'd want to know. Wexley's board meeting just ended. They fired Trevor. Effective immediately. Security escorted him out carrying a cardboard box. I stared out my apartment window at the city skyline, processing the news. That was faster than I expected. The Meridian account was the last straw. Apparently, he tried to blame you for everything, but they weren't buying it. Gregory chuckled. Almost feel sorry for the guy. I didn't. Not even close. Thanks for letting me know, I said. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and navigated to LinkedIn. Curious if there was any public acknowledgement yet of Trevor's dramatic exit. What I found was even better. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of growth. Harper Consulting moved into proper offices, nothing ostentatious, but with floor-to-ceiling windows and an actual door I could close when needed. We'd grown to a team of 7, including 3 former Wexley employees who jumped ship after Trevor's dramatic exit. On this particular morning, I arrived early, savoring the quiet before everyone else arrived. A custom plaque on my desk caught the morning light. Daniel Harper, founder and CEO. Not bad for someone who couldn't even get a corner office 3 months ago. My assistant Jenna, also ex-Wexley, had left a stack of industry publications on my desk with a note. Thought you'd enjoy these. The top magazine featured a spread on marketing's rising stars, with Harper Consulting featured prominently. I flipped through the article, smiling at quotes from satisfied clients. Edward Vanderson had called us revolutionary in our approach. Gregory from Meridian praised our unparalleled commitment to client success. Even more satisfying was the sidebar mentioning Wexley's unprecedented client exodus and leadership vacuum. After Trevor's departure, Wexley had promoted from within, naming their creative director as interim CEO. But the damage was done. They'd lost nearly 40% of their revenue in 3 months and had begun laying off staff. The industry whispered about acquisition rumors. My computer chimed with a calendar notification. Quarterly review with Meridian 10. There's where I am. Our biggest client was now even bigger. We'd expanded their initial contract by 20% after demonstrating early results that exceeded their expectations. As I reviewed my presentation for the meeting, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification, probably another connection request. We'd been fielding plenty as our reputation grew. I almost dropped my coffee when I saw the name Trevor Marks. Not a connection request. Trevor had viewed my profile. Curiosity got the better of me. I clicked through to his profile and sat back, stunned at what I found. His headline, once marketing director at Wexley Solutions, now read, Marketing Executive, Leadership Specialist, Seeking New Opportunities. His profile picture showed the same confident smile, but his activity feed told a different story. 3 months of increasingly desperate posts. Excited to explore new horizons after 8 successful years leading Wexley's marketing division. Then, open to consulting opportunities in the marketing space. Bringing 15+ years of executive experience to your challenges. And most recently, actively seeking marketing director or senior management roles. Available immediately. No new positions listed, no recommendations from colleagues. Just the digital equivalent of standing on a street corner with a cardboard sign. I scrolled through his experience section, noting how he'd rewritten history to claim credit for campaigns I'd spearheaded, clients I'd secured. The Meridian acquisition, my final achievement at Wexley, featured prominently in his list of accomplishments. Enjoying the view? I looked up to find Melissa standing in my doorway, coffee in hand, nodding toward my screen. Just doing some research, I said, quickly closing the tab. She smiled knowingly. Industry research, I'm sure. Nothing to do with a certain former boss who's been sending connection requests to everyone from Wexley. He reached out to you? And Corey? And Patricia from HR? Even the receptionist? Melissa settled into the chair across from me. Rumor has it he's interviewed at 8 agencies and been rejected by all of them. Word travels fast in this industry. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant. This was exactly the outcome I'd envisioned during those dark days after Trevor's humiliation. Instead, I felt something unexpected, a twinge of empathy. Not enough to reach out or offer help, but enough to recognize the human cost of what had happened. Trevor had built his career on taking credit for others' work and treating people as disposable. Now he was experiencing exactly what he'd inflicted on others. Enough about ancient history, I said, closing my laptop. How are the new client presentations coming along? Finished last night. And you should know we just got another inquiry from Kelton Media Group. They're currently with Wexley but heard good things about us from Meridian. The business Trevor had fought so hard to protect was continuing to crumble, even in his absence. Send them our standard intro packet, I decided. But let's not actively pursue current Wexley clients. We've made our point. Melissa raised an eyebrow. Feeling merciful today? Strategic, I corrected her. We don't need to be seen as vultures. The best clients will find their way to us based on our reputation. By mid-afternoon, after a successful meeting with Meridian and lunch with a potential new client, I returned to find a small package on my desk. Inside was a bottle of 25-year-old scotch with a note from Gregory. To celebrate our first quarter together. Here's to many more. I placed the bottle on my credenza next to the industry award we'd already won for the Meridian campaign. The same campaign Trevor had tried to claim as his own. As the afternoon light streamed through my office windows, I looked out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Trevor was probably sending more desperate connection requests, updating his resume, rehearsing explanations for his sudden departure from Wexley. Meanwhile, I was building something that already had a stronger foundation than Wexley ever had, a company that valued talent, respected clients, and understood that no one succeeds alone. My phone buzzed again. Another LinkedIn notification. Trevor Marks has sent you a connection request. I picked up my phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Accept? Decline? Either way, the power was now mine. I smiled, remembering the words that had set this entire journey in motion. I can replace you anytime, Dan. Remember that. In the end, Trevor had been wrong about everything. He couldn't replace me, but I had certainly replaced him, and built something better in the process. I pressed decline and turned my attention back to the future.